It takes a special piece of music to keep you from playing a video game, but the Animal Crossing series features a slew of title screen themes that make it physically painful to press the start button before they're finished. And in spite of being written by different composers for different hardware over a 20-year time span, these themes all share a consistent musical identity. After analyzing the main series title themes, I've found 3 qualities that consistently factor into the Animal Crossing sound. The recipe goes something like this. Pour out a simple, sweet foundation, sprinkle in just a touch of bitterness, and then stir in liberal key shifts that blend together in a smooth, sophisticated way. To explain this recipe, let's first examine the theme from the original Animal Crossing game. Each Animal Crossing theme projects a sense of innocence right out the gate, through the use of simple, straightforward major key melodies and chords. Through each of our examples, you'll see melodies that spell out the entire tonic triad in a very clear way, which gives the music a childlike sweetness. The original Animal Crossing theme starts with a melody that walks up the F major scale from the 3rd to the 6th, then runs back down an F major triad, ending the phrase on an embellishment of the root note F. The music feels very wholesome, but it's not just the melody that contributes to this. Notice how the chords in the beginning, walking up the F major scale, include the 7th of this G minor chord and voice this 3rd chord as an F over A rather than some kind of A minor chord. This keeps the root note F in all 3 chords, softening the sound of the already soft major scale walk-up. And we can't overstate the importance of rhythmic feel. You'll notice these title themes all use the same general tempo, a relaxed walking pace, with the rhythmic foundation being a repeated dotted quarter to 8th note kind of groove. These pieces never break out into 16th note runs and rarely get fancy with offbeat rhythms, but instead let the gentle 8th note feel reflect the pace of everyday life in a quiet town. Once the simple, sweet foundation is laid, the next step is to add a little bitterness to the mix, just a touch of dissonance that adds nuance to the music. This comes in the form of borrowed chords from the parallel minor key, as well as shifting emphasis to minor chords within the original key. The original Animal Crossing theme borrows an E-flat 6/9 chord from the parallel minor key of F minor to close out the first phrase, a substitute for the 5 chord that gives the music a slightly darker and less direct spin. On the repeat of this phrase, this move is emphasized by adding in a B-flat 7 sus chord before it to set up this E-flat chord, with even more borrowed minor key notes. These borrowed chords undercut the F major tonality, but the following phrase gets truly crunchy with this D minor to G minor add 2 move. Adding the 2nd to this G minor chord, a crunchy half step below the chord's 3rd, adds a real sharp pang of dissonance to the music, contrasting the simple sweetness of the piece's initial idea. If we were stuck entirely in pleasant F major land for the whole piece, the music might get a little too sweet. Like in cooking, sometimes you need a little bitterness to bring out the best of the other flavors. And now it's time to stir in some sophisticated key shifting. We've broken out of the key with borrowed notes, this E-flat note in particular, but so far always used within the context of F major. We've also seen this last D minor to G minor bit, while not outside of the key of F major, move the focus away from our tonic F chord to emphasize a G minor sound. After this section, we see the music use out of key notes to drift farther and farther away from the original key of F, with this C minor to D minor to E flat walk-up moving to an F sus chord, which moves to a B flat 7 sus chord, trailing off with this rolled A flat major 7 chord in the upper register. Continuing the fourth movement at the end of the G minor section from D minor to G minor to C minor feels like a natural progression, and while the E flat note doesn't fit within the key of F major, it doesn't feel super surprising since we've been exposed to it already at this point in the piece, and we haven't heard any E naturals yet that would clash with it. This D minor to G minor section is a perfect pivot point between the keys of F and B flat. It's not until the E flat to F7 sus setup that we really realize we've shifted keys, and then the following B flat 7 sus move hammers home how we've drifted off quite a ways from where we started. And then the music snaps back to a simple F major melody, as if to say, oh right, we were supposed to be a fun, cutesy animal game, haha, whoops. Even after all of these twists and turns, the music still feels sweet, but not sickly sweet. Optimistic, but not naively so. Let's jump from the oldest example to the most recent. The main theme of Animal Crossing New Horizons is built off of an F major arpeggio with the 6th added as a decoration. The melody starts on a 3-to-1 move in F, then overshoots the 5th up to the 6th before resolving back down to the tonic chord tone. It then continues down a tonic F major arpeggio before ending the phrase on a leap up from the 6th to the 2nd of the key, leaving the melody hanging and leaving us wanting more. This very simple, very F major E idea is harmonized mostly how you'd expect, but there are a few tinges of bitterness mixed in. The hanging 2nd at the end of the first phrase is harmonized with the minor 4 chord, making this a B flat minor 6. Like in our previous example, this chord is borrowed from the parallel key of F minor and facilitates a beautiful, bittersweet resolution back to the tonic F chord. The repetition of this melody cuts off the ending with this D flat to E flat move in the guitar, more chords borrowed from F minor. These aren't dissonant chords, but pretty chords borrowed from the parallel minor key are the perfect candidates for this kind of nuanced, nostalgic feeling. Things start getting more sophisticated from here on out. I love the way this section closes off with an E flat sus to A flat major 7 to C7 sus chord to bring us back to an F major sound. We've been hanging out with these borrowed chords for so long that this move to A flat major 7 feels like a pretty good resolution, but the way the A flat major 7 chord shifts to the C7 sus brings us back to our home key seamlessly. The upper extensions of each chord form a triad. There's a C minor triad hidden here over the A flat bass note, and the C chord is played with a G minor triad on top of a C in the bass. A flat and F major are pretty distant keys, but a C minor triad moving to a G minor triad is a very natural move. So this chord transition feels super smooth. The following section, brought in by this staccato melody lead-in, walks up the F major scale from an F over A to B flat to C sus to D minor, with the melody over top giving us a 5th dropping down to the root. This idea repeats, and then we get some great harmonic sleight of hand. The idea repeats a 3rd time transposed up a major 3rd into the key of A major. This is a big harmonic shift, but the transition is silky smooth. The D bass note at the end of the phrase in F major worked great to set up the 3rd that starts off the phrase. A leap down of a 4th like this feels great as a resolution. But this D note also works great resolving down a half step to C sharp into this key shift. The D minor chord works as a pivot chord, functioning as a normal 6 chord in F major, but also facilitating a minor 4-to-1 resolution into the key of A. And the melody, with this walk down the scale from the root to the 5th, that brings us to the start of the phrase, works just as well winding its way back up to this E note to start a 5-to-1 leap in the key of A. Every note at the end of this phrase is a double entendre, working just as well moving back to the key of F as it does moving into the key of A. This is harmonic sleight of hand that could fool Penn and Teller. It'll become clear shortly how much this New Horizons theme borrowed from the title theme of Animal Crossing Wild World, which is, in my mind, the representative piece defining the Animal Crossing sound. It starts with an intro where a descending chromatic line goes from the 7th of the key down to the flat 6th, all over a tonic A bass pedal and harmonized as an A major 7 to A7 sus to F sharp minor over A to D minor 6 over A progression. The piece is in the key of A major, but the 2nd and 4th chords here borrow notes from the parallel key of A minor, with the minor 4 chord here once again providing a beautifully bittersweet way to resolve back to the 1 chord. This example kind of skips the sweet foundation to dive right into the bitter mixture, but when the melody comes in we see it using a very clear outline of an A major triad, overshooting the jump up to the root A with one added note, the 2nd, which resolves down to the root in a move very similar structurally to what we saw in New Horizons theme. This A major triad moves into a scalar walk down that ends with a leap down from E to A, the 5th to the root of the key, which again should sound very familiar after listening to New Horizons theme. You'll notice that while this melody starts off sweet, the harmony takes a dark turn pretty much right away. We're moving along pretty quickly with 2 chords per bar, starting on the 1 chord and moving to the 4 and 5 chords of the key, but at the end of this phrase we land on a dark F sharp minor 11 chord, the relative minor of the key, and let it ring out for 6 whole beats. The bass sets up this chord with a C sharp, giving a big strong drop of a 5th down to land on that F sharp note, giving it extra emphasis. Okay, but why add all of this bitterness into the mix? Wouldn't keeping a purely upbeat vibe better fit this goofy animal game? The music manages to transcend the simple aesthetic to imbue the games with a more profound feeling, a sense of nostalgia. Fellow Draper acolytes will already be aware that the root of the word nostalgia translates to the pain from an old wound. You can't throw a rock in the comment sections of these themes on YouTube without hitting the word nostalgia, let alone stories of how much these games and this music mean to the people who played them, and the inclusion of melancholic musical twists are integral to the music's emotional potency. Much like a very well-written TV drama, an element of sophistication and purpose pervades every note of each of these Animal Crossing themes. Towards the end of Wild World's theme, we see what inspired New Horizons' clever key change, right down to the staccato melody lead-in. This section over a 3-6-2-5 move. C sharp minor 7 to F sharp minor 11 to B minor 7 to D over E. The lead-in, a D over E to E over D to C sharp minor, feels so good every single time. On the 3rd time though, this lead-in is transposed down a minor 3rd to a B over C sharp to C sharp over B move, transitioning us into the key of F sharp major. The following bar gives us a little 3-6 move in F sharp that's interrupted by the final chord of the piece, a move to a D over E chord that sets us back in our original A major territory. We step back into the key as quickly as we stepped out, but the hastiness of this modulation makes its smoothness all the more impressive. The way the melody facilitates the key change by using melodic phrases introduced earlier, this 5th down to the root move that we saw ending off the very first melodic phrase of the tune, and this 1-3-4 move that kicked off the following melodic phrase, are repurposed in the key of F sharp major, combining a couple familiar things with something new. Ending on this held B, which works as the 5th of the final E7 sus chord, seamlessly brings us back to where we started. Even the voice leading of this D sharp minor 7 to D over E is flawless. The F sharp stays the same, and the C sharp and A sharp notes move by just a half step each to bring us to this D major triad over the E bass note for a silky smooth transition. Now that is slick. With all of those pieces together, the simple, sweet foundation, the touch of bitterness, the sophisticated harmonic handling, we get a rich, complex flavor so smooth and elegant you'd think Brewster had just poured it into your cup himself. The latter two elements create this sense of world-weariness that doesn't beat down the optimism of the music's simplicity, but rather gives that optimism more weight. You get the sense that KK Slider has been around the block a few times. He knows how the world works, but he still comes back every week to play his guitar and help the townsfolk relax with his laid-back tunes. If you liked what you saw here, consider going and checking out my Patreon page. I couldn't keep making these videos without the generous support of my patrons. And $5 and up patrons get access to all of my transcriptions for every video I've ever done, including these Animal Crossing pieces. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.